Welcome back, pilots, to Squadrons Update. This week we're going to be talking about some of the big topics that previously haven't really been mentioned too much, despite there of course being a lot of interest in them. And some of these include questions on whether there'll be an open beta happening for Squadrons, will a EA Play subscription grant you early access, and of course finally finding out the status of private matches and servers. As always, we'll be covering all of this and more in today's video. And before we get into any of that, but a quick reminder, as if you do like these type of videos, then do remember to give it a like to show your support for not only this update series, but also the content within it. Quick little disclaimer too, not Squadrons related, but today I got some braces for my top teeth put in, so suffice to say this will affect my speech here and there. But fortunately I'll have them off in a few months, so the audio should be back to normal then. With that out of the way, let's get into it. It's sometimes crazy to think about how quick time flies, but we're already a month away from the release of Squadrons, and with that in mind, it does make sense on why we're only now getting the answers for some of the big questions we've had for the game. Of course, in addition to the big stuff, we've also had the chance to learn a bit more about some of the other smaller elements and flight mechanics present within the game too, which of course will still be pretty important, especially during gameplay. First up, let's talk about the briefing phase, which we know will be present right before every single game we play in Squadrons. This is basically where you and your team will talk strategy and devise a game plan before jumping into the action. Some people love this idea while others not too much, and that's fine too. Squadron's creative director Ian Fraser did recently reveal some info that may cheer up those folks who aren't particularly fond of this, as he confirmed that the entire briefing phase will only take up a total of 2 minutes. So that's not too bad at all. This sounds like just enough to get everything sorted without the time in this phase getting too dull or boring, and I'm good with that. Next, Ian also gave us a scoop on the total match time of fleet battles, the creme de la creme of Squadrons as you may. And not too surprising, they're gonna be pretty long. 25 minutes to be exact, which is pretty good and feels similar to what Galactic Assault games felt in Battlefront 2. As for the actual flight gameplay, don't worry, as Ian also wasn't shy in revealing some new info here too. According to him, drifting will be a special state beyond just cutting boost and turning on the map. You'll maintain momentum briefly as it decays, but cease generating forward thrust and will be able to turn very well thanks to it. Drifting will be good especially for rapid course changes. As for when it comes to interceptors and their lack of heavy ordnance, Ian answered on Twitter that interceptor utility against starfighters over capital ships is purely due to component options or lack thereof, and not some artificial buff or nerf to their attacks based on their target. He did note that interceptors are good for precision strikes on capital ship turrets and subsystems though, so there's always that. But if what you're looking is to deal the most damage on capital and flagships, then of course the bomber class is the type of ship you'd be wanting to go with hands down. Next, one person on Reddit shared some concern regarding the point of having an auto-aim cannon as a component in the game. Mainly because such a thing never existed in the original X-Wing vs TIE Fighter games, and just in general the idea of an auto-aim component sounds overpowered, which to be fair is a good question to give. Community manager Jay Ingram responded to this by saying, "We're being pretty careful with them and making sure they feel fun but not overpowered. A higher skilled player using unguided cannons should be able to perform better." So yes, while the auto-aim cannon will be a useful component to have, it shouldn't be overpowered, and at the end of the day, skill will always be a better option than this. If anything, it does sound like a good component for new players just starting out, but eventually most players will probably drop it in favor of something more useful at their skill level. And regarding capital and flagships, Jay also quickly touched up on this too, stating that in total there will only be 6 types of large ships on each map. The Nebulon B and the Arcuten's Cruiser as the 2 main capital ships, the CR-90 Corvette and the Imperial Raider as the support ships, and lastly the MC-75 and the Star Destroyer being the flagships. As stated by Jay, this was primarily done to keep things in balance. So unfortunately no, we won't be able to unlock new and different support, capital, or flagships for our squadrons. Which is kind of a bummer, as the New Republic had way more MC-80s than say MC-75s in canon, so I'm not sure why Motive decided to go all in on the MC-75 instead. Oh, and what's more, no, we won't be able to customize any of these ships either. As for the weak points on them, Jay did say that neither starfighters nor capital ships will have weak points. But flagships, on the other hand, will have weak points, but they'll only show up after destroying a particular subsystem. So that's definitely something worth keeping in mind before jumping into a game of fleet battles. Next, let's quickly talk about components. Are they universal unlocks, or are they only per ship? That's what one Twitter user asked Ian, and surprisingly, they're actually per faction. For example, if you unlock the ion cannon for your Imperial Squadron, then every Imperial ship you own will have the ion cannon unlocked, if of course they can support it. You also earn 2 requisition points, aka component unlocks, each time you do level up too, so you'll be able to split them evenly between the factions. Another interesting thing to point out is as well regarding faction play in the story mode too, where Ian confirmed that the missions will be split evenly between the New Republic and the Empire. So fortunately, there won't be a repeat of the Battlefront 2 campaign here, where you only got to play the Empire for a few missions at the start and then later it was all Rebel or nothing. So suffice to say, I'm very glad to hear this. And yet another neat part of the game that we gotta talk about is the communications options that will be present in Squadrons, which is the text chat on PC, built-in pilot chatter, communication wheel, and even a ping system too. This I'm especially excited to try out. Ever since I experienced the ping system in Warzone, then man, I can't go back to playing games without the ping system. This is pretty much going to be the new standard for team multiplayer games going forward, so glad to hear Squadrons is all on board with this. Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the answers that we got to some of our big questions for Squadrons. Which number 1 is, will there be an open beta happening at all this month? Jay was the one who broke the bad news here, as unfortunately, no, there won't be a public beta happening at all. Now granted, it's already getting pretty close to the release date, so even though most of us were holding out hope for a small beta to still happen, just to test out the game before buying it to see if we like it or not, but sadly this won't be the case. And as for private games and servers, the answer is pretty much the same here too, because as it stands now, Squadrons will have neither. And while the possibility still remains for this to maybe be added in the future, it certainly won't be in the game at launch. And finally, Jay also squashed the rumors that if having EA Play would allow you to play Squadrons early, to which the answer to that was, as you guessed it, also a no. So it looks like that even EA Play members will have to wait until October 2nd to play it just like the rest of us. But until the next time, this will do it for your Squadrons update. As always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel to not only support it, but also keep up with Star Wars news, gaming, and canon lore released every week. And consider following me on Twitter and Facebook to never miss out on the latest Star Wars content. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.